Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show. So perhaps someone would be so kind as to let me know whether I can be heard. Okay. Seems okay. The reason I ask is I had to do a hard boot of my computer again for some reason. It doesn't like to restart normally, which could be a hint of trouble to come. I don't know. Trouble. Welcome to JG Ballard world. I'm looking out my window here, and it is a noxious sight. The smoke from Oregon has reached Vancouver, and the sun has disappeared from the sky. It is permanent twilight here in Vancouver now. The air is exceedingly noxious. And so what I expect is going to happen is that I have been coughing and producing mucus, and I suspect a lot of people are coughing, and they are going to think that they have the coronavirus and start panicking. In fact, I wouldn't put it past our public health experts to somehow make a connection between the smoke from the fires and the coronavirus, that it somehow makes it easier for people to get infected. The further we get away from the actual disease, that is to say hospitalizations and people dying, the greater the panic seems to increase. I see more and more and more people wearing masks. And as mentioned earlier, Walmart has decreed that everyone there must wear masks. And it is a very curious sight to see all these zombies shopping, and me among them. So we are going to talk. Oh yes, it's a story from the San Francisco Chronicle, actually originally from the Washington Post. As dangers rise, Dateline San Francisco is warming, burning, epidemic challenge of state, with many who live for the first time. Monica Gupta from Pitt seemed to have stood backing Pete, California, with a new rich West, a nation rather. For generations, the task in an economy constantly reinventing itself from Hollywood to the farms of the Silicon Valley. But many of California's 40 million residents, the California dream has become the California compromise, one increasingly challenging to justify with a rapidly changing climate, a thumb on the scales economy, high taxes, and a pandemic that has killed more here than in any other state. That might have something to do with California having more people than any other state. During the course of his term, President Donald Trump has singled out California, a state he lost by 30 percentage points, as an example of Democrat-caused urban unrest, irresponsible immigration policy, and poor forest management. Even nearly 60% of the state's forests are managed by the federal government. Several are burning today, with acres already scorched. Yes, global warming, climate change, climate emergency, whatever you want to call it, is going to be blamed and has been blamed for this, but it's all nonsense. Are we supposed to believe that if the temperature rises 2 degrees Celsius, trees suddenly burst into flame, spontaneous combustion? No, it is poor forest management. Forests need to be pruned of what is in effect here, but is not considered to be a good thing anymore for a reason which I couldn't possibly understand. But California has been overrun by illegals, and guess who they vote for? I mean, demography is destiny, and California is playing out much as one would expect. James Kunstler writes today, and so America has a new manufactured crisis election date, as if all the other troubles piling up like tropical depressions marching across the September seas were not enough. Let me remind you what else is going on. The Wuhan pandemic is still on the scene. The economy is collapsing. A domestic race war is escalating. The whole West Coast is burning, and U.S. oil production is crashing. America needs a constitutional crisis like a hole in the head, and that's exactly what's being engineered for the holiday season by the clever folks in the Democratic Party's lawfare auxiliary. Here's how it works. The complicit newspapers and cable news channels publish polls showing Joe Biden leading in several swing states, even if it's not true. Facebook and Twitter amplify expectations of a Biden victory. This sets the stage for a furor when it turns out he loses on election night. On cue, Antifa and BLM commence to riot all over the country. Meanwhile, a mighty harvest of mail-in votes pours into election districts utterly unequipped to validate them. Lawfare cadres agitate in the contested states' legislatures to send rogue elector slates to the Electoral College. The dispute ends up in Congress, which awaits a seating of newly elected representatives January 4th, hopefully for lawfare, mostly Democrats. Whoops. Turns out the Dems lost their majority there too. Fighting in the streets ramps up and overwhelms hamstrung police forces in Democratic-run cities. January 20th, Inauguration Day, rolls around, and the Dems ask the military to drag Trump out of the White House with great dispatch, as Biden himself put it so nicely back in the summer. The U.S. military breaks into two factions. Voila! Civil War II. You didn't read that here first, of course. It's been all over the web for weeks since the Democratic Party-sponsored Transition Integrity Project ran their summer war game, intending to demonstrate that any Trump election victory would be evidence of treason and require correction by any means necessary, including sedition, which they'd already tried a few times in an organized way since 2016 and botched. The Democrats are crazy enough now to want this. They have driven themselves crazy for years with the death wish of eradicating Western civilization and themselves with it. There are many exegeses of this phenomenon, mostly derived from Marxist theories of revolution, but my own explanation departs from that. The orgy of political hysteria, insane thinking, and violence is a psychotic reaction to the collapsing techno-industrial economy, a feature of it, actually. When all familiar social and economic arrangements are threatened, people go nuts. Interestingly, the craziness actually started in the college and universities where ideas, the products of thinking, are supposed to be the stock in trade. The more pressing the practical matters of daily life became, the less intellectuals wanted to face them. So they desperately generated a force field of crazy counter-ideas to repel the threat, a curriculum of wishful thinking, childish utopian nostrums, and exercises in boundary smashing. As all this moved out of the campus, the graduation function, it infected business, news media, sport, Hollywood, etc. The country is now out of its mind. Echoes of France, 1793, a rhyme, not a reprise. Where a knife-wielding Hispanic man was shot by the cops. Crazy how unjustified that seems. The incident and the reaction to it, riot, fires, followed the assassination attempt of LA County Sheriff's deputies in their car Saturday night. But what a BLM protesters showed up at the hospital where the deputies were under surgery, now and long, so try to explain that to their faithful fans on MSNBC. I think that Ben's theory of the overproduction of elites holds true here. And so they adopt elite attitudes and styles. In fact, as the West, students find themselves with a practice is much real. And that is a this, isn't it? President Trump was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, which resulted in an article in Atlantic by Graham Wood, "End the Nobel Peace Prize. The nomination shows that peace had its chance and blew it." How about that? Yeah, we've got to get rid of the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm not a fan of the Nobel Peace Prize. Obama won it for nothing, curiously enough. Trump is a peace president, but he's Donald Trump. So, that can't be the case. Let's see. Now the contradictions of the Peace Prize should be. What the? Am I off the air? What? Oh, so can I be heard? Seen? Oh. I'm back, am I? I have a message saying your connection is unstable. Please wait while we try reconnecting. I've done everything possible at my end and it was working fine last week. Okay. Close that. I'm very, very sorry about this, and I just wish there were something that I could do about it. Just a second here. I don't have very many things open on my computer, but I'll close as many as I can. So let's see. Oh, this is ridiculous. My computer is yeah, okay. Okay, I keep getting this message unstable. I think I'm going to kill this and try again. All right. Okay. Oh, I'm back, am I? Okay. I don't, it's a direct connection, internet, cable. Yeah, it was working fine last week, but yeah, all right. Again, my apologies. Yes. Yeah, the Peace Prize has always been subjective, says Graham Wood. Yes. Of course, but its incoherence has become too great. The honor doesn't incentivize peace if one year you give it to Kissinger and another you give it to Mother Teresa, who never started a war, but who, as Christopher Hitchens liked to point out, used her Nobel lecture to inform the world that the greatest destroyer of world peace is abortion. Oh, yes, I see an Albanian nun got the Peace Prize. So, it's out. He concludes, all of this points to one of two conclusions. The Nobel Committee can either give the prize to do-gooder organizations such as the Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders and play things extra safe, or it can keep the prize locked away for a while and reevaluate its reasoning for a modern era. I suspect that the reevaluation will end if the committee is honest with the admission that peace can be recognized only by its fruits, which take decades to mature, and not by its seeds. To keep giving awards for the seeds is to court embarrassment and to make yourself hostage to wacky attention-seeking nominations like Trump's. Better to shut it down before the trolls do first. How is it attention-seeking to make it known that forever wars are a bad idea? They're a bad idea for the United States, and they are also a bad idea for the countries in which they take place. That doesn't seem wacky or attention-seeking to me, but then again, I'm not a staff writer on The Atlantic. Let's talk about another Atlantic writer, Shadi Hamid. And who is this fellow? Well, according to Wikipedia, he was born in 1983 and is an American author and a senior fellow in Brookings Institution. Curiously, Wikipedia does not tell us where Shadi Hamid was born. Let's see, he has been named one of the world's top 50 thinkers by Prospect magazine. Ooh, that sounds pretty good, huh? Yeah. And he is pushing the blackmail line, the Biden blackmail line, which is nice country you got there, America. Shame if something were to happen to it. Hamid tweeted out something which he thought better of in my new and removed. In my new Atlantic piece, I argue that even strictly law and order Republicans have an interest in Biden winning. If Biden loses, mass unrest is more unlikely because the left will have more difficulty accepting the results. Golly, that's a shame, isn't it? That's just an absolute shame that the people on the streets burning, looting, and attacking the police, they just wouldn't accept a Trump victory. So we'll just have to, give in to the mob. Let's see. Let's see. He begins. This is the era of expecting the worst while hoping for the merely tolerable. Some might say the worst is already happening. Economic disaster and 190,000 dead from a pandemic. The economic disaster is self-inflicted. Well, the president and his surrogates insist in a feat of self-delusion that the best is yet to come. Well, yes, I suppose Trump could say, game over, man, game over. He could say that. Is that what the president of the United States is supposed to say? As someone who has argued against catastrophism, I don't believe Trump is a fascist or a dictator in the making, and I don't believe America is a failed state. I find myself truly worried about only one scenario, that Trump will win re-election and Democrats and others on the left will be unwilling, even unable to accept the result. A loss by Joe Biden under these circumstances is the worst case, not because Trump will destroy America. He can't, but because it is the outcome most likely to undermine faith in democracy, resulting in more of the social unrest and street battles that cities, including Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, have seen in recent months. For this reason, strictly law and order Republicans who have responded in dismay to scenes of rioting and looting have an interest in Biden winning, even if they could never bring themselves to vote for him. Liberals had enough trouble accepting the results of the 2016 election. In some sense, they never really came to terms with it. And so now, according to one of the world's 50 greatest thinkers, they should be rewarded for doing it again. The last 4 years of which they continue to explain away the of their fellow Americans side with empathy. It was easier to think that those Americans had been lackeys, manipulated and deceived, that they simply hadn't understood what was best for them. Moreover, the Russians had interfered and tipped the balance in an extremely close election through propaganda, fake news, and collusion with the Trump campaign. Perhaps, as former Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid suggested, the Russians had even tampered with the vote itself. That was then. This time it would be worse. In 2016, Trump hadn't ever held political office, so no one could truly grasp just how bad and exhausting, again with the exhaustion, president he might become. Exhaustion, there's so much exhaustion around. Let's see, let's get to the peroration here. The distance between what a society should be and the tragedy of what it actually becomes is less of a problem in democracies, because democracies are supposed to be responsive to voters' demands and grievances. Nice joke, Shadi, but they aren't always. The gap will grow larger under a Trump presidency than a Biden one, and this has implications for mass unrest and political violence against American cities. For democracy to work, the losers of elections need to believe that they can win the next time around. Otherwise, their incentives to play the spoiler increase. A breakdown of democracy is always a possibility, but the country is more resilient than it may seem, and consolidated democracies seldom break down in any circumstance. That said, this is one of those propositions that is better left untested. Yes, as Steve Saylors is calling it, this is the rioters' veto. And so how's Joe Biden doing? One hears crazy things about him. This is from Breitbart. Okay. According to Breitbart, Joe Biden appears to reflect teleprompter text during a TV interview. Was the Babylon Bee was joking last week that they're just, Joe likes to wear these aviator shades and they could just have a teleprompter, built into that. Thus, he would be able to see what he's supposed to say. Plus, he would look bitchin' at the same time. According to Kyle Olson, Biden, appearing on the CBS's The Late Late Show months ago, held up a photo of himself posing with his two sons when they were in college, a picture which he said hangs in his bedroom. And he held up the framed picture. Green text seemed to reflect off his glasses and into the camera. As the apparent text first appeared, the show quickly cut to a shot of host James Corden, then back to Biden holding up the photo. A slowed down snippet highlighting this moment racked up hundreds of thousands of views Friday night, quickly eclipsing the view count on the Late Late Show's official upload. Michael Moore says, I bet his handlers, Biden's handlers, weren't too happy with him going off script. He probably got reprimanded. Earlier this week, Biden Press Secretary TJ Ducklo would not answer one way or another whether Biden uses an aide to help him with answers during TV interviews. Is this going to be allowed in the debate? I've mentioned this before. I'll mention it again. Various things are going on during a debate. You've got the moderator, you've got the audience, you have your opponent, you have the things that you are trying to remember that you're supposed to say, and of course you're reacting off the cuff, and there are often surprises, and just because there is a voice giving you sound bites or whatever in your head doesn't mean that you'll be able to come through with it. It's the kind of thing, it's the reason why news anchors get paid a lot of money, is that they can actually do this. But according to TJ Ducklo, he of the Soylent Grin, I'm not going to allow the Trump campaign to funnel the questions through Fox News and get me to respond to that. Nolan Gordon tweeted, he may be having a bad day. Now, this comes from Reddit. I cannot vouch for its veracity, but it would explain a lot of things. Let me read it. I worked as a low-level staffer for the Biden campaign's HQ in Philly from July to the end of August. I am more of a Bernie guy, but I thought I should do whatever I could to defeat Trump, so I joined up. Eventually, I became so disgusted with what was going on, I had to leave. Some of this I experienced. The juicier bits are things my now former co-workers told me. So take those bits with a grain of salt. 1, the whole campaign is extremely paranoid about leaks or getting hacked. If I were to publish the email chains I got, you'd see about 1,000 messages saying, please see me or meeting at 10 a.m. No one wants another DNC hack situation, so no one puts any real information in emails or texts. Even with COVID, in-person meetings are the norm. They don't want to do anything on Zoom either in case someone records it. Everyone is suspicious of each other and nobody likes to give specifics on anything. It was frustrating. 2, all of the Bernie bros joke about being another Seth Rich. With the paranoid atmosphere, some of us would make comments about ending up like Seth. None of us really believed the conspiracy theories except for one weird older guy who is convinced that, and I'm going to redact this name, murdered him. His evidence, redacted name, made some cryptic tweets about punishing the hackers the day before Seth was murdered, and the deed was done less than a mile from the Intelligence Museum in the District of Columbia. I didn't buy it, but I can't say I wasn't intrigued by the coincidence. 3, there are people whose job it is to digitally de-age Biden for political ads. If you saw a recent speech by Joe, and though he looked like a mummy, then saw snippets of the same speech in an ad, you might have noticed he looked a lot better. That's because they contracted visual effects artists from California to de-age him. Normally, I wouldn't begrudge them this, as I'm sure all campaigns try to make their candidate look good. But considering what they're really covering up, which is Joe Biden is in the early stages of dementia and is on medication for it. This is the big one, and the one I have the least direct experience with, but it's been an open secret for some time. Anyone who has had a relative with Alzheimer's or dementia can tell you there are good days and bad days. On the good days, when Joe is at his most lucid, his campaign manager, Jen, will send him out for photo ops or TV interviews. Make hay while the sun is shining, you know. On the bad days, Jen just tells the press pool, no Joe today, and they're all like, okay, cool. Most of the time, he's just a little foggy and gets really agitated, but one of my coworkers told me that back in May, there was a day where he thought he was running against Gary Hart in the 1984 primary again. Joe went under wraps for several days after that. He's been more lucid recently because his physician, Dr. O'Connor, put him on Namenda. Jen apparently was worried about someone finding it out because she insisted that he prescribe it under a series of phony names and then have the interns pick it up. I bet there are a lot of pharmacists in Philly wondering why there are so many young people on Namenda. The dementia medication has had unfortunate side effects. There's no dancing around this. The medication has made Joe incontinent. Though his good days have increased dramatically, he can barely get through a press event without running to the bathroom. That's why he didn't take questions after announcing Harris as his running mate. They weren't afraid of the questions. The press loves him. They were afraid he was going to piss his pants on camera. Lately, Jen's been having closed-door meetings to discuss which brand of incontinence pads would be best to purchase. Seriously, a group of paid staffers sat around and discussed which brands were the least visible, the least likely to leak, and wouldn't audibly crinkle. That's around the time I left the campaign. I can't be a party to this sick game anymore. I never really liked Joe Biden, but he deserves better than to be thrust into the public eye when he should be in memory care. His wife should put a stop to this, but she's way too excited about being first lady to care about her ailing husband. And again, that was from Reddit, so make of it what you will. I did a quick search for Namenda on drugs.com, and I was curious to see the contraindications. Hang on, let me get this list here. Seizures. Oh dear, that's not good. That's not good at all. And the side effects do indeed. Most frequent side effects include constipation, headache, and hypertension. And they also include bloating, blurred vision, dizziness, headache, nervousness, pounding in the ears, slow or fast heartbeat, and incontinence. So there you have it. Digital de-aging. Well, I hope they do a better job for him than they did in Scorsese's film The Irishman, where for some reason Jack Nicholson de-aged, managed to look exactly like Alec Baldwin. I still can't get over that. Oh, yeah. Want to know why people hate journalism? I could give lots of reasons. How about Time Magazine and the rest of the media cheering for COVID-19? They're cheering for a disease. Yes, 200,000. We made it, folks. 200,000 dead. Dan Rather said the presidential election in November would show how many people were dumb enough to believe President Donald Trump when he says he didn't want to spread panic in the early days of the coronavirus pandemic. And I'll just wait for that RCMP cruiser to pass. Yeah, why would Donald Trump want to spread panic? Rather said, what this presidential election is about is whether the country is going to move more in the direction of white supremacy or move more in the direction of a multiracial constitutional republic based on the freedom and the democracy. That's the proper frame in which we should now put this election, given what the president says, what he's been doing, this long list of things No sense going through the litany, but he knew in early February how serious the coronavirus was, but he repeatedly misled the American people. He said, using an excuse and a lie, he didn't want to spread panic. Well, that's not what Dr. Fauci says. And isn't Fauci one of the heroes of this? Trump says that he's open to an election debate between him and Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, moderated by Joe Rogan. 4 hours. That would be that'd be fun to see Joe Biden trying to stay awake or not attack someone in a 4-hour debate. But it has been pointed out, Joe Rogan has already said that he would rather vote for Trump than Biden. So this is unlikely to happen, although Trump may go on Rogan's show on his own. William Briggs writes today, wait a second, Biden cancels debates won't be the headline. Instead, it will be Biden's forced to cancel debate amidst corona doom fears, or credible security threats force debate cancellation, or citing Trump's inherent dishonesty, Democrats recommend Biden bow out. Maybe debates move online. One of these or something similar will appear maybe this week, but likely in 2 closer to the scheduled debates. Biden will appear to go down swinging. They'll let us hear how anxious he is to do the debates so that he can smear or cream or whip Trump. But because of X, they're forcing him to stay in his mother's basement. At the end of June, I predicted this was not a difficult forecast. My suspicion is that Biden won't be allowed to face Trump in a debate. Biden's dementia or mental incapacity is already obvious for all those who allow themselves to see it. Letting him go up against Trump in an even 1 2-hour debate would force those who won't see to acknowledge Biden's limitations, quietly to themselves, of course. Corona doom might be their excuse, as Biden is still hiding in his mother's basement and he hasn't left yet. That was back in June. But the numbers just aren't there to make this plausible, even though the media is trying their best. They might use Corona doom to modify the debate by insisting on pre-recorded answers to softball media questions, safety first. They might say a debate is impossible because of Trump's irredeemable racism, and so he is not deserving of respect. Nothing has changed to modify this. Now we all know the reason why they have to cancel live in-person technology-free debates. Biden is losing his grasp on reality. He slurs his words, forgets where he is, forgets what he was about to say, even forgets who he is at times. At this point, he might not even remember who he groped and who he didn't. He's already been busted reading the teleprompter to answer questions from friendly propagandists. Incidentally, how do his handlers get answers up quickly enough? Voice-to-text software, fast typists? Anyway, it's clear the Ron Burgundy of politics will read anything showing on screen, even the bits that say, do not read this part aloud. He's already done that, in fact, reading a chapter heading or just a little editorial insertion. If we were forced to stand on a stage with Trump for 2 hours, the platform would have to be rigged with black-clad workers ready to shove Biden back to center stage whenever he begins to wander off. That's a joke, son, so laugh. But it is seriously serious that Biden would embarrass himself out of the election if he entered the ring with Trump. Further, everybody knows this. There are only 2 unknowns, both of which will provide hours of fun. The first is the exact excuse they'll use, and the second is how NPR listeners will attempt to square the circle. I mentioned all this elsewhere, and a fellow named Bogus Bones responded. The most popular excuse, at least on Twitter, seems to be, Trump will continually lie during a debate. Why should we let a lying liar lie to people constantly in a debate? That has legs and belongs to the orange man bad species of excuses. I don't discount it, but it has the stink of finality about it. My idea is they'll have to cancel debates while claiming not to have canceled them. They'll try one of 2 things. 1, canned answers to prepared questions, which they'd even let Biden read on camera. They can do as many retakes as necessary. Or 2, they'll say Biden will debate from his mother's basement. He will use the teleprompter gag if so. This strikes me as less likely because it's obvious that many things can go wrong. Have you seen people trying to set up a PowerPoint presentation under pressure? Some are suggesting President Kamala will be offered up instead of Biden to show how ready she is and how women are empowered or whatever. But that is an open admission that Biden will let himself be replaced and keeps the Biden has dementia angle open. While it's fun to speculate about the excuse they'll use, it will be pure pleasure watching Biden's handlers and propagandists squirm like eels poked with sharp sticks. One handler's strategy is to claim all questions that are difficult are beneath him. Look for more of that. But by far, the most hilarity will come from NPR listeners, people who know Biden has floated over the edge, but who also know they aren't allowed to admit it, even to themselves. To justify this paradox, they'll pick up some obscure or arcane facet, which they will, more adroitly than the most battle-hardened conspiracy theorist, twist into an argument why Biden is actually the superior man. In 2016, we had the meme wars. In 2020, we will see the left stroke out and eat their own dead. I saw a reporter on Twitter over the weekend seriously make the claim that Joe Biden has encyclopedic knowledge. That's the phrase she used, encyclopedic knowledge of all of the bad things that Trump has done. Encyclopedic knowledge. This is a fellow who frequently does not know where he is or even the correct pronouns to use to refer to himself and his wife. I was sent a very disturbing video from the Australian state of Victoria. 8 p.m., police knocked down a man with their car and then stomp on his head. Yep, and there it is, stomping on his head. He is now in a coma. State Premier Dan Andrews comments, all of this can be avoided if people don't protest. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's time to retire that chestnut about Australians being lovers of freedom and whatnot. Let's see, what are they talking about in Britain? This canceling Christmas. Yep, Johnson's going to cancel Christmas because of the rule of six. Ban on social gatherings over 6 people comes into force today. This is from Will Jones at Lockdown Skeptics. Denmark, the country once lauded for its coronavirus response, has been placed on England's quarantine watch list due to rising cases. Countries around Europe tighten restrictions. Israel locks down again. None of these people seem to know how a virus works. Sage scientist Professor Sir Mark Walport warns that the UK is on the edge of losing control, while Professor Peter Openshaw of, you've guessed it, Imperial College, intones that the public must act fast and fall in line or face a second lockdown. Panic is back. You've only got to look across the channel to see what's happening in France and what's happening in Spain, says Professor Walport. The only way to stop the spread of this infection is to reduce the number of people we all come into contact with. And new reported deaths in Spain have flatlined as in France, flatlined at almost 0. A huge rise in cases or COVID-19 admissions being handled or to indicate runaway growth in March. The most likely explanation for which is the emergence of population immunity at low anticipated antibody levels, plunged into a dismal and economically devastating winter. The facts are these. No country has seen more than hit with 925 others are that. Sweden's death toll stands at 578 deaths per million, around 0.0 home being at home. The average age of death was 80, and in other countries are worse affected when they're wave. The journalists, the Democrats, were cheering for the second. And oh yes, masks. This is craziness. Why? It's people with masks. They should be kept on at all times, right? As people are eating, say, there's often bits flying out of their mouth. But at the behest of Cuomo, dishing it 24/7. which wearing a a skateboard and makes, or whatever. Wearing masks, groove. Paul Rudd says so. And you've seen him in, Apatow, Jutto movies. So you can take this advice to the bank. Later, he is reduced to simply at the audience, wear masks. Democratic Republic of Victoria, 74 arrests and nearly 200 fines yesterday. Riot police were seen holding shields to the hostile crowd chanting freedom. Several people were arrested and issued with more protesters as they contained the demonstration. Hill Street, where the protesters marched. In its statement, police said they were disappointed that many protesters were aggressive so far. Police say they expect to issue further fines once they confirm the identity of other individuals. Quote, anyone in relation to such behavior, we again urge people not to leave home to protest. Do I want to get into this now? Yes. Edinburgh University has renamed a very ugly building. It was the David Hume Tower, named after the great empiricist. It's now 40 George Square, named after the third, who opposed the abolition of slavery and whose reign 1.6 million Africans were transported as slaves to British colonies. Yeah, more that was reported on Lockdown Skeptics of person who on LinkedIn whose account was shuttered because he posted a link to an article piece on COVID-19. And got more news on this. LinkedIn just responded and said they would restore my account only if I agree not to post content, which may, quote, interfere in or improperly influence an election or directly contradict guidance from leading health organizations and public health authorities, unquote. In these hysterical and censorious times, social media censorship is one of the big challenges Western civilization faces. When free speech dies, so does truth. Toleration of dissent is at a low ebb right now, and the public health emergency has only supercharged the efforts of the thought police. The day before, they had talked about Christmas, and several people, prominent people, saying, well, they're not canceling my Christmas. We get together every year. My parents are old, they say, and we're not going to stop doing this because of this nonsense, and you can't arrest us all. I'm just kind of wondering just how many people Boris Johnson would be prepared to address. The Telegraph's Michael Deacon wrote, not even Agatha Christie could have dreamt up to twists like this. Before he entered Downing Street, Boris Johnson was, above all else, a vigorous defender of personal liberty, a tireless opponent of the nanny state, an implacable foe of bureaucratic bossiness. If he believed in anything at all, it was freedom. And what does he do when he gets into power? He makes Christmas dinner a criminal offense. No one could have seen that coming. The man himself certainly didn't. Only a couple of months ago, he told the country he was looking forward to a more significant return to normality by the end of the year, and declared that the good, solid common sense of the British people would see us through. Yet now it seems his faith has wavered, his resolve has shriveled, because here he is, just a couple of months later, banning all social gatherings of more than 6 people. So unless this new law is lifted soon, unlikely the traditional family Christmas is canceled. Or is it? I don't think it can be, whatever the government says. In practice, canceling the traditional family Christmas would be impossible. It doesn't matter what laws the government lays down, nor how many Boris busybodies, aka COVID marshals, it recruits. The fact is this. Every Christmas, around 12 million people travel across this country to visit their families, and if this December 12 million people, or half that, or just a quarter, or even a sixth, decide that to hell with the new limit, they're going to spend Christmas with their families anyway, there are no practical means by which the government can stop them. What are the Boris busybodies going to do? Erect a police roadblock at the end of every street? Ban the sale of petrol? Spend the whole of December going from house to house, slashing the tires of every Volvo in Britain? It can't be done. Well, yeah. Again, this has really set the cat amongst the pigeons. who, oh yes, liberty, the ancient traditions of liberty, etc., etc. Well, we find out that not very many people actually care about it. This is from the Daily Mail. Lockdown blow to Britain's health. Hospital admissions for 7 major non-COVID illnesses, including heart attacks, slump by 173,000 as general practitioners are ordered to see patients face to face. Previous data for England shows that there were nearly 6,000 admissions for heart attacks in March and April compared with last year, and almost 137,000 fewer cancer admissions from March to June. Analysis by the Daily Mail found that the trends were largely similar across the board for patients who suffered strokes, diabetes, dementia, mental health conditions, and eating disorders. And we all know what this is going to mean. More dead people, and more dead people who are not over the age of 80. I suspect to this day, people think that, no, I can't go to the hospital even though I appear to be having a heart attack, because they need all those beds for COVID-19 patients. And I do hope that people will pay for this, that there will be a reckoning after this is over. So what does Alex Berenson have to say? With winter coming, sunlight helps the body make vitamin D. Public health advice for vitamin D supplements might actually be useful. Hard to see much downside anyway. Of course, vitamin D costs about 0.00001% as much as other interventions, so it would not help the COVID economy. Yeah. Could things have been different? Could sanity have prevailed with COVID? Hindsight is always 20/20, and it's very easy to armchair quarterback. Still, some tentative conclusions may be useful to discuss. This is from someone who calls himself Quintus Curtius. At the beginning, it was understandable that authorities would err on the side of caution and take a wait-and-see approach. It contradicted past pandemic procedures, but I still get it. But once the spring and summer of 2020 rolled around, there was enough data to know what was going on. But by then, the panic had become too embedded in the popular mind. The president should have set up a special information task force to counteract the propaganda being spewed by the MSM. It would have helped. This was information warfare, and the battle was lost early on by inaction at the highest levels. The playing field was conceded to the enemy, the MSM. Their lying narrative was allowed to go unchallenged for too long, and at some point, I think the president simply gave up. He sensed on a gut level that trying to oppose the narrative was a waste of time. The dissenting COVID voices on Twitter, Barron's, El Gato Malo, etc., should have been deployed and weaponized on a large scale. This should have done much good. It did nothing. The result has been catastrophic. The lesson: never abandon the field and never neglect the importance of information war. It is a true dimension of conflict. And finally, specific things that should have been done. A, televised presentations by someone explaining the realities of COVID, Ross Perot-style infomercials. B, immediate amplified refutation of MSM lies by CNN, Washington Post. And C, assign teams to refute lies on Twitter. One can only hope, election coming up, that Trump has learned this lesson and he will have his teams, social media teams, ready to go. So let's have a look at the chat, and I'll find out whether I'm still on the air. Tom Anderson says there will be no reckoning, only contrived slide into more restriction of rights, more mass media manipulation, more psyops, and more elites running roughshod over the plebs. Oh, this is from out of left field. Kevin, were you ever a Flock of Seagulls appreciator? I like that song of theirs, I Ran, and I may even have bought their first record. That was a long time ago. Neil Terry's California was not hit too hard, but I don't know anybody who got sick with the virus, nor do I know anyone who knows anyone who got sick with the virus. I think a pen would be noticeable. Octopus Knight says, when the lie is this big, it can't be widely understood and openly acknowledged to be a lie without taking down the whole system. I mean, we're still saying plain, I'm not going to repeat that last part. This sounds like Dostoevsky level horror. What's that in reference to? I had a long talk with a friend who lives just outside Miami, and she says she still doesn't know anyone who had the Rona. Neil Terry says, I wouldn't put it past the MSN to try to have an all-video solo debate so they can edit and try to make Biden look sane and edit fall. No, in person or nothing, clearly. Oh, here we go again. Oh, okay. Let's see. Buddy, I hate to be mean, but Paul Rudd absolutely sucks. LOL. Isn't his whole thing is that, he's the guy that nobody hates? Hey, it's Paul Rudd. I got a pleasant face. I'm not very memorable, but no one seems to hate me. Well, I think that's going to change. Visionary companions say he may wear a hollowed out encyclopedia as a hat when he is tipsy, but beyond that, well, look, Joe Biden's, now they're saying that Joe Biden is super smart. I mean, Joe Biden tried this when this is his third time around for him running for president. And he tried it on the previous occasions and he got busted. He was a mediocre student. That's simple. Constantly going on about his high IQ. He's supposed to be the folksy one. He's not supposed to be like Rand Paul is supposed to be super smart, but Joe Biden, that's not his image. Now they're going to try to retcon him to being some, 138 I plus. Tom Anderson says Biden will come down with the coronavirus sometime shortly before the debate and will be stricken with it until right before the election when he makes a miraculous recovery. And no, I don't. Look, if it were announced that Biden had the coronavirus, he would lose, like in a landslide. I mean, it doesn't seem to have gotten through to people that this is a man who is literally terrified of other people. Because if he gets the coronavirus, he's very likely to die. And so, no. Oh, yeah, I'm going to campaign. There's no crowd. There's a bunch of reporters sitting in circles, socially distanced with laptops. And I don't know, for now, he's getting away with it. They had to send, they must be worried about Nevada because they sent Kamala there. Did you see that when Trump was making fun of her name? Kamala. I was following this on Twitter and people, it's like, blood was leaking from their ears. They were so angry. Let's see. Exacerbate the paranoia to the end. TJ Ducklow sounds like a side character on The Sopranos, says Neil Terry. Smashing that like button, KMG. Your issue is not with hardware or RAM, etc. It's bandwidth. Okay, well, yeah, I didn't really want to pay, $110 a month for Shaw's best internet service, but yeah, I guess I'm going to have to bite that bullet. I'm really going to have to bite that bullet because, I'm on, I guess I need the bandwidth. Need more bandwidth. I listened to your appearance on Ralph Retort today. Good job, KMG. Thank you. Let's talk about the new Pledge of Allegiance. And that Pledge of Allegiance is to Black Lives Matter. It's, these guys are nuts. But we've got the Schrodinger's cat thing going on as well. We support Black Lives Matter. Yeah, but Black Lives Matter is a pretty sketchy organization founded by two Marxists. And what? One of them is a homosexual and one of them is a transsexual? No, when we say we support Black Lives Matter, we're not talking about the organization. We're talking about the principle. Yeah, but there's an actual organization called Black Lives Matter that popularized the term Black Lives Matter. I guess they think they're going to get away with it. And I don't know, maybe there are, but I'm getting the impression that people are sick. They're sick of Black Lives Matter already. Black Lives Matter rioters smash county vehicles in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with bricks and referred to police as the real KKK, following the police-involved shooting of a man who, as body cam footage showed, chased a police officer with a knife. Video showed demonstrators hurling bricks at a vehicle in Lancaster late Sunday night into early Monday morning. Police affirmed that demonstrators damaged a county vehicle parked in front of the police station, as well as a county vehicle parked on West Chestnut Street. Referred to here as Black Bloc Antifa. Where do they get all these bricks from? Who's paying for the bricks? That's one of the things that Kunstler asked last week. Yeah, I mean, the message is clear, and I have to say I have been predicting this throughout the year, that black people just don't get arrested, that it is not legitimate to arrest black people for anything because of the systemic racism in the justice system and in the police. Yeah, but there's lots of black police, there's lots of black police commissioners. Doesn't matter. They're systemically racist too. Oh, yes, this is from the Mail. BLM and anarchist activists snarled traffic on the George Washington Bridge in New York City on Saturday, and then confronted police at NYPD's 34th Precinct on Broadway. Videos posted on social media show people dressed in black, many unmasked, blocking off the road with orange traffic cones and preventing vehicles from entering an eastbound upper-level ramp to the bridge. The head of the local BLM group tweeted the group's intentions of the protest, which started in the Bronx. "Roll with this Saturday as we shut shit down," Hawk Newsom tweeted. "Say less, work more. They never shut down the George Washington Bridge before," Newsom tweeted. Couldn't this be defined as a criminal conspiracy? Let's see. Rudy Giuliani tweeted protesters, and the word protesters is in scare quotes, "do not have the right to hinder EMTs, police, firefighters, and other essential emergency services for doing their job for the 8.5 million tax-paying residents of New York City." Yeah, they're here, they're there, they're everywhere. Again from the Mail, disgusting scenes outside LA County Hospital as protesters taunt cops about two young county sheriffs fighting for their lives after being shot in a patrol car ambush, while Trump demands animal gunman is caught and put to death. Yes, James Woods retweeted a video of black people in the neighborhood having a great time after the shooting. They're very, very pleased. I'd say joyous would be the word. And of course, there was an NPR reporter, an Asian woman, who was helping blocking the entrance and later complained that she was arrested. I should think that she should be grateful that she was only arrested. Scott Walker, the former governor of Wisconsin, has a question for Kamala Harris. Will you visit the two ambushed LA deputies? Yes. She visited someone in Wisconsin who was charged with felony third-degree sexual assault and said she was proud of him. She and Joe Biden need to side with law enforcement and denounce radicals. I think that we'll get a sort of general statement about this. I don't think we'll get a visit. This is a very amusing story from Bloomberg. United Airlines packs its charter flights for sports teams with young blonde crews and bars older flight attendants from working the plum routes, according to a new lawsuit. In doing so, the airline bases the value of workers entirely on their racial and physical attributes and stereotypical notions of sexual allure. Stereotypical notions of sexual allure. You mean like being young, vital, not covered with, tats, no metal in the face, hair that doesn't look insane, low BMI index. I don't know, for women, big in the breasts, big in the hips, small everywhere else. Yeah, those traditional sexual, stereotypical notions of sexual allure. The attendants, a black woman who has worked for the airline for 28 years and a Jewish woman with 34 years of tenure. That's curious. How is it significant that this woman is Jewish? said that they both tried repeatedly and unsuccessfully to get assigned to the charter flights. In a statement released Saturday, United highlighted its track record on diversity and inclusion. While we cannot comment on this ongoing litigation, the flight attendants included in our sports team charter program are largely representative of our overall flight attendant population in regards to age and race. Importantly, flight attendant eligibility to work a charter flight is based solely on performance and attendance and has nothing to do with age, race, or gender. Of course, it would have nothing to do with NFL players demanding blonde, white flight attendants with stereotypical notions of sexual allure. No. Couldn't possibly to have anything to do with the druthers of NFL players, because we know that NFL players they're all feminists. They're all allies. They are unceasing in their allyship. We call it that. Candace Owens blames P-Brain, LeBron James, and BLM for the Saturday night ambush of two LA sheriffs after stirring up anti-police sentiment. Why did this happen? Because P-Brain celebrities that are idolized like King James tell young black men that they are literally being hunted, she said, referencing a May 6th tweet in which James responded to the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. This is the natural result of such hyperbolic, dishonest rhetoric. The racist, anti-police, Black Lives Matter lie is to blame. Yes, here's the tweet. We're literally hunted every day / every time we step foot outside of the comfort of our homes, ! Can't even go for a damn jog, man. Like, WTF, man, are you kidding me? And then there's a lot of question marks and exclamation marks. No, man, for real, I think he means, are you kidding me? I'm sorry, Ahmaud. Rest in paradise and my prayers and blessings. Yeah. Colin Kaepernick. He's back on the Madden video game. And he's rated higher as a quarterback now than he was last time he was on Madden, when he was still a pro athlete. So the NFL is bending over backwards to suck up to Black Lives Matter. But guess what? It's not good enough for Colin Kaepernick. He said, and this is according to Agence France Presse, that NFL social justice initiatives were propaganda on Sunday as scattered protests marked the first full day of the 2020 season. Kaepernick, who launched his kneeling protests in 2016 to draw attention to racial injustice, questioned the sincerity of the NFL stance against racism, citing the fact that fellow player activist Eric Reid remains unemployed. Reid, who joined Kaepernick's protests in 2016 when the two played for the 49ers, was released by the Carolina Panthers in March in a move that surprised many. The 28-year-old safety, who continued to kneel last season during the pregame playing of the U.S. national anthem, has not been hired since. When the NFL runs propaganda about how they care about Black life, they're still actively blackballing Eric Reid for fighting for the Black community. Eric set 2 franchise records last year and is one of the best defensive players in the league. Kaepernick was widely vilified for his protests against racial injustice and police brutality and has effectively been shut out of the NFL since being released by the 49ers in 2017. And I'll point out that he had a terrible season in 2017. The NFL initially opposed Kaepernick's protests, with league commissioner Roger Goodell saying players should stand for the U.S. anthem. However, after months of protests in the United States following the death of George Floyd during his arrest by police in Minneapolis in May, the NFL changed course. Goodell says he now regrets the league's failure to support Kaepernick and admits that the quarterback's protests had been mischaracterized as unpatriotic. This season, the NFL has launched a number of initiatives to demonstrate its support for activists campaigning against racial injustice. End zones across the league will bear the words "End Racism" and "It Takes All of Us," while players will be allowed to wear helmet stickers featuring the names of victims of racism. Sunday's NFL action began with several teams declining to come onto the field for the anthems. Dozens of players and coaches around the league now or sat down during the anthems. But there's two national anthems now, separate but equal, someone joked. There's the Star Spangled Banner, and there is Lift Every Heart and Sing, which, as we all know, I think we've all known this for about 3 weeks, is the unofficial Black national anthem. I fear that there may be moves to make it official. So, from the Associated Press, Jimmy Golan, Jason Myers kicked off to start the Seahawks season opener against the Falcons, and the ball sailed through the end zone for a touchback. No one moved a step. Instead, the players all dropped to one knee. After years of pleading with the NFL to act against systemic racism, they were willing to wait another 10 seconds to make their point. Teams opening the year in empty stadiums knelt, locked arms, raised fists in protest, or stayed off the field entirely for the Star-Spangled Banner and the Black Anthem Lift Every Voice and Sing on Sunday as the once reluctant league brought racial injustice to the forefront on the NFL's first full slate of games. In Atlanta, the teams wore armbands honoring civil rights leader John Lewis and staged the most striking of the day's gestures. They barely flinched as the opening kickoff landed beyond the end line, took a knee, and remained there for about 10 seconds before trotting off the field to resume the game. It's a start, Falcons running back Todd Gurley said after the game. Are we going to keep doing this? You don't want to make it just a one-time thing, just like having a good game and the rest of the season you do nothing. Lewis, the Georgia congressman who died in July, was an honorary captain for the game. The Falcons also wore shirts with his quote, "The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society." Yes, so long as you vote for the Democrats. I am so much looking forward to NFL ratings absolutely cratering this year. Okay, so Black Lives Matter is it's become mandatory in Britain as well. And I was curious, how many Black people are there in Britain? Well, I suppose it depends on what you consider to be Black. According to the 2011 census, so the numbers would be higher. If you add up all of the people who declare themselves to be Black or some mixture, probably identify as Black, it would appear to be about 5%, at least in 2011. I don't know, could be as high as 6 or 7% now? One would get the impression that the Black population of Britain is perhaps 30, 40, 50, 60%. RADA students, it is a teaching school for actors and actresses, demand George Bernard Shaw's name be dropped from drama school's theater because of playwrights' support for eugenics and fascism. Oh, the anti-racism plan calls for restoration comedies to be no longer performed. Why? Why would that be? What is so problematic about restoration comedy? Oh, due to their association with the empire. Oh, all right. Yeah. How about Shakespeare? Are they going to drop him entirely? The Anti-Racism Action Plan has been drawn up by RADA's student body and argues that RADA celebrates historical figures who embraced racist ideologies. This man spoke in support of eugenics and fascism. George Bernard Shaw said a lot of things. He practically never stopped. He had a lot of ideas. If you want to go back and see people who demonstrated early support for Hitler and especially Mussolini, you're going to find a lot of famous names there, not just on the right, but on the left as well. Oh, an explanation of eugenics. Sir Francis Galton coined the term eugenics in his 1883 book, Inquiries into Human Faculty and Its Development. Prominent citizens, scientists, and socialists championed eugenics, including the likes of Marie Stopes, Theodore Roosevelt, Helen Keller, and Alexander Graham Bell. The famous five in Canada who are just the greatest heroes in Canadian history. They're a bunch of feminists. they had very strong pro-eugenicist views, mostly to do with eliminating Irish and Quebecois in Canada. I believe they were put on our currency not that long ago. Oh, yes, the University of Edinburgh is slammed over cowardly and spineless decision to rename Tower Block commemorating 18th century philosopher David Hume, father of the Enlightenment, because he encouraged a friend to buy a slave plantation. So it has been named 40 George Square, which refers to a king, George III, but it also refers to a fellow called George Floyd. And I'm not making this up, that one of the principals at the University of Edinburgh said that if his life had not been cruelly cut short, then he has no doubt that George Floyd would have excelled at whatever he chose to study at the University of Edinburgh. Again, not making this up. What are we going to hear about George Floyd next? What, that he invented quantum mechanics or the Dyson vacuum cleaner? Because it appears that this fellow was just an absolute titan. Lewis Hamilton, he crossed a line, faces official probe for wearing political t-shirt calling for arrest of police over the shooting death of a black woman in Kentucky as he celebrated winning the Tuscan Grand Prix. And here's a picture of him, and he's wearing a black sweatshirt. In the front, it says, "Arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor." And in the back, there's a picture of the late woman with the slogan, "Say her name." Race car drivers are not supposed to wear political garments. FIA statutes forbid political statements of any kind. Hamilton could be fined, with one official privately indicating to Sportsmail the Mercedes man had crossed a line. The FIA and sports owners Liberty Media have previously tried hard to work with Hamilton on his anti-racism fight. Having also worn the shirt on the grid prior to the race, Hamilton paid tribute to the emergency medical technician in his post-race interview. I suppose if Formula One racing, really wanted to get Lewis Hamilton in line, they could just let him know that, okay, so we're going along with your hilarious claim that you're not a homosexual. You had better cut this out right now, or else we're not going to go along with that charade any longer. 2020, I guess this year in which seemingly impossible, deranged headlines are everywhere. Again, from the Mail, Ashley Banjo reveals he and diversity have been the target of racial abuse and threats following the group's controversial Black Lives Matter routine on Britain's Got Talent, as Star breaks his silence amid 15,500 Ofcom complaints. Ofcom is who you complain to when you see something on television which offends you. Ashley Banjo has broken his silence. The dancer, 31, took to Instagram to share a video on Sunday in which he addressed both positive and negative response, as he revealed he and the group have been the target of racial abuse and threats following the dance. In the statement, he said, "It's been a lot, everything from racial abuse to threats to just some really nasty stuff. I'm not going to give light to it. I'm not going to give it any more time than it deserves, except that you filmed a whole video for Instagram about it." But a lot of the negativity, the nastiness, and the racism shows exactly why these performances and exactly why this conversation that has arisen is so necessary. It's a conversation, is it? Racism is very real. I've known it before, and I definitely know it now. Ashley originally began his video by thanking those who had supported diversity and had shared positive messages and well wishes, even mentioning those who had checked in on the members' mental well-being during the aftermath of the routine. His entertainment routine on Britain's Got Talent was to mimic the death of George Floyd in police custody. And yeah, That's what they want to see. Has he said that he's exhausted? I thought that he said that he's exhausted. Someone else has. That is the word of the year, exhausted. Yes, the numbers. Britain's Got Talent saw a decrease of 350,000 viewers on the next show after Diversity's antics. According to the Mail, the numbers were still a strong showing for BGP as it received more than double the viewership of its main rival in the slot, The Last Night at the Proms, which has faced its own controversy and only drew in 2.1 million viewers. Yes. The event has faced backlash from viewers after the BBC said that the controversial British anthems Land of Hope and Glory and Rule Britannia would be performed without lyrics because they have imperialist ties. Why don't they just, desert London? London has very, very strong internal imperialist ties. Hundreds, thousands of buildings in London with strong imperialist ties. What about all the fortunes derived from imperialism? Should these people be forced to give up their money? And so the situation in Britain appears to be that if you are a black person, you get to tell everyone what to do or what you can't do. And one of the presenters of Britain's Got Talent, a recording artist that I'd never heard of, let's see. If ITV says sorry over BLM-inspired dance, I'll quit, says Alicia Dixon. I looked her up, and her latest recording, which I believe came out in 2017, reached number 81 in the British charts. So, in other words, she is a nobody. Sources on the show say the 41-year-old is firmly against bosses taking anything other than a supportive stance over the politically charged performance by Diversity last weekend. The routine, which recreated the killing in the U.S. of George Floyd in May, has so far led to more than 15,500 complaints to Ofcom, the broadcasting regulator. The Mail on Sunday understands that ITV considered offering an apology to viewers who had been offended by the dance, but not for screening it. But Ms. Dixon, who has spoken publicly about being subjected to racism, told friends that ITV should not offer an apology and would consider it her role on the show, reconsider her role on the show if it did. In the performance, Diversity's choreographer Ashley Banjo, who is also sitting in as a judge for the injured Simon Cowell, is pinned down as a white police officer kneels on his neck. So no, you don't want to get on the wrong side of Alicia Dixon. Oh, yes. Filming was pretty awkward. BGT's Alicia Dixon and fellow judge David Walliams had a row after she said his Little Britain antics were inappropriate. The TV star, 41, is believed to have made the comments in jest. However, according to the son David, 49, was upset. David's old Little Britain characters included black woman Desiree DeVere and bearded transvestite Emily Howard. Yeah. You know how many people have worn blackface in the history of entertainment? I won't say everybody, but it's pretty close. Harry Enfield was grilled about his use of blackface. It shows that he'd met with Paul Whitehouse. Excellent stuff. He refused to apologize for them. Good for him. You know, the British royal family is not looking very good these days, but there's that Kate Middleton. Everyone loves Kate Middleton, right? Perhaps, she needs to be told to stop doing stupid things. Kate Middleton selects a photograph of a Black Lives Matter protester for her exhibition of Life in Lockdown at the National Portrait Gallery as she unveils more images ahead of the Hold Still project's launch tomorrow. Why is Kate Middleton having an exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery? And finally, on that subject, a column from Andrew Doyle. With the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, head teachers have come under increasing pressure to signal that they are on the right side of history on a wide range of issues. This has meant modifications to school curricula and pastoral policies that have been rushed through with little consultation with parents or staff. As a result, pupils are being subjected to an even more suffocating form of woke education. For their part, many teachers have attended unconscious bias training sessions, despite the fact that the science behind such courses has been largely discredited. Others have been advised to read up on books such as White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, which claims that all white people are racist and that their denials are further proof of racism, and How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, its thesis being self-explanatory. One teacher told me about a school assembly over Zoom in the early days of the lockdown in which pupils were berated for their white privilege. Prestigious schools such as Eton and Eltham College in Southeast London have promised to decolonize their teaching practice and combat systemic racism. Last year, the charity Youth Music called for pupils to be taught about the work of the rapper Stormzy instead of Mozart. The idea that young Black pupils are inherently incapable of appreciating classical music is not only wrong-headed, it is about as patronizing as it gets. This is the bigotry of low expectations. This is a Stormzy fellow. He performs what is known as grime music, which appears to be the Black people's principal contribution to British culture. His name is Michael Ebenezer Kwadwo Omari Owuo Jr. And let's see, his mother is from Ghana. And he grew up, he was born in Croydon. It becomes clear, I followed this man for some years, and it is clear that he hates Britain with a passion, an absolute passion. But yeah, I suppose Mozart really has nothing to offer young people. You know, frankly, I don't think that there's, I mean, education used to be doled out like medicine. You know, it's good for you. I certainly don't think that there's many students in British public schools who have any interest in Mozart, regardless of their color. Let's have another look at the chat here. The Biden campaign is really on fire. Yes, I've been hearing that. Metal Mike no, it's not Stormy, but Stormzy. Octopus Knight says, decolonize your life world. Rituale Romanum says, save for extremist solutions, the leftist riots and harassments isn't extreme enough to warrant such. This will end well. Many have worn blackface, but none as handsomely as Justin Trudeau, as Metal Mike says. Yeah, Justin was what they call a drama kid. He still is a drama kid. Debrea says, unbelievable. Social distancing ended in Austria today. Whenever I see these people lined up, you know, there and then there and then there, I think, are we still doing this? We're still doing this now? Once again, unless you are going to go much, much, much harder in terms of the lockdown, with the exceptions that exist, people haven't been protected from being in close contact with each other. But as we learn from Peru and other countries, these people can be locked down, but I suppose you'd better lock them away forever, because once they get out, they are going to spread the virus to other people. That's how viruses work. Octopus Knight says, most hate hoaxes are created by white police to undermine the racial justice movement. A hoax of a hoax. Truly diabolical. Jim Smith, just to confirm, we're still in 2020. Angela Davis, Danny Glover, and Linda Sarsour, among others, have signed an open letter accusing the Chicago Police Department of fabricating charges against Jussie Smollett. Yeah. Why isn't this man in prison? Angela Davis, as Peter Brimlow pointed out, this is the 50th anniversary of her literally getting away with murder. Jim Smith says, I used to like Osaka until she started spouting the BLM line. I don't know. Did anyone expect anything different? I mean, it's just, you know, these are things that is someone in her position, she just has to say, what happens to people who don't go along with their narrative? Do us all, okay, yeah. Well, separate but equal, segregation has made a big comeback in my lifetime. Of course, this time around it's being pushed by black people and not white people. Let's talk about, oh yes, let's just a word about cuties. The huge backlash against that. Thousands of people have already launched a call to boycott Netflix over cuties. And what is the answer that we're getting from supporters of cuties? Is that it is not kiddie porn. It is a protest against kiddie porn. And this viewpoint was satirized by the Babylon Bee, that Netflix produces show on which kills puppies in order to protest against killing puppies. That's pretty much the level of this. There's a lot of people, well, a fair number of people in the media seem to be determined to stand. Meghan and Harry have yet to speak in Netflix's streaming cuties. To quote them, if you're complacent, you're complicit. If dish soap was an unlock action and inspire hope, you are waiting. Susan Rice, she's on the board of Netflix, and Michelle and Barack Obama have signed a huge contract. And people talking about a huge contract. It's not a huge contract. Getting cozy at Netflix, but no comment at all on cuties. Would have thought you'd feel the need to say something, guys. You like to speak out so much when it suits. I don't know, for the same reason that NBA players are not speaking out against the diabolical things being done with this party of China. So yeah, let's get crazy. Let's get there in terms of news. J.K. Rowling, it will appear, worst woman in the world, and people openly for her to destroy. Yeah, I know, shocking. Oh, here's some humor here. Just in JD before she way. TMZ report. It's about a murderous cis man who dresses as a woman to kill his victims. Didn't we see that in The Silence of the Lamb? And didn't we see that in some movie made by Michael Caine back in the 70s? Viciously intolerant of transphobia. It has recently been revealed that Daniel Cliff, actor in Harry, is in fact the real author of the Harry Potter novels. Credit. Yeah. Don't get on the wrong side of transsexuals. This is from Pink News, and the next three will be from Pink News. A new book penned by J.K. Rowling finds her private detective protagonist, Cormoran Strike, investigating a cis male serial killer who is up as a one to kill his cis female victims, according to an early write-up. According to Telegraph, 8 of the 900-page novel. 900 pages. This woman needs an editor. Doc. Her novels, they came in a nice, like her editor, Chad, retired or died, and Iris Murdoch's novel used to be like they started getting this thick. And War and Peace, and the book, writes reviewer Jesus. Troubled Blood is the fifth entry in Rowling's Cormoran series, penned under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith. Second in the series, The Silkworm, had previously been criticized over its depiction of a trans character described as able and aggressive, because that never happens. In the book, the woman stalks Strike before attempting to stab him. After the attack, the titular manages to trap Pippa in his office, where her trans identity and dead name are revealed. At the point, J.K. Rowling described characters Adam, Apple, and Hands, with the strike character warning her, "It won't be fun for you, not pre-op." Absolutely scandalous. But, you know, people are hurt. People have been desperately hurt by J.K. Rowling. Cynthia Nixon is one of them. She was one of the city stars who announced, 3, 4, 5 years ago that she was now a lesbian. Then she ran for governor of New York against Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary. And now it turns out that she has a transgender son. There's a shocker. Cynthia Nixon has said J.K. Rowling's explosive comments on trans people were really painful for her 23-year-old transgender son, Samuel. The queer Sex and the City actor revealed in a 2018 interview that her son had come out as trans. Now the star has opened up about the impact Rowling's relentless tweets and essays have had on Samuel, who grew up immersed in Rowling's wizarding world. It was really painful for him because so much of his childhood was tied up with Harry Potter, Nixon told The Independent. "We're a Harry Potter family. The books seem to be about championing people who are different. So for her to select this one group of people who are obviously different and sort of deny their existence, it's really baffling." She continued, "I know she feels like she's standing up for feminism, but I don't get it." Nixon went on to reveal that her son Max is currently in the middle of a Harry Potter marathon with a friend. When asked if Rowling's trans comments made her uncomfortable with rewatching the films, Nixon referenced Daniel Radcliffe's defense of the trans community, which he released through the Trevor Project in June. The thing that he tried to impart to people was that if you are a queer person or a non-queer person have found a home in these stories, please don't let them take that away from you. Or maybe read another book. Can you imagine being an adult and whining about the political opinions of a book, an author, have ruined your life? Imagine that. So let's get we got nuts. Now let's get nuts and intersectional. I happen to find this. It was, on the side. You might want to read this next. And it was worth it. Again, from Pink News. Bisexual writer prompts fierce debate after saying closeted authors like Love Simon's Becky Albertalli shouldn't write alphabet people stories. Writer Gabby Dunn prompted fierce debate after criticizing Love Simon creator Becky Albertalli for writing queer stories while closeted, then complaining about scrutiny of her sexuality. Dunn, who is a novelist, journalist, and podcaster, suggested that queer writers who were still in the closet should not write alphabet people-themed stories after Becky Albertalli said she was forced to come out as bisexual. Well, as Liz Lemon said, there's no such thing as a bisexual. It was invented in the 90s to sell jeans. In an essay published on Medium in August, Albertalli, who wrote the book Simon versus the Homo sapiens, which went on to inspire the feature Love Simon, opened up about her sexuality the first time and said she had felt forced to come out and accused of profiting off communities she had no connection to. "This doesn't feel good or empowering or even particularly safe," Albertalli wrote. "Honestly, I'm doing this because I've been scrutinized, subtweeted, mocked, lectured, and invalidated just about every single day for years, and I'm exhausted." There we go. Exhausted. The author was met with a wave of love and support. Impressed. I think you shouldn't create queer, weird, and comfortable being part of it. It's great to want to write queer stories. Do it for women once you're comfy and come and wait before you write about it, because I just don't think you're the victim. Put yourself into queer spaces. Center in that space and then get weepy about having to explain. No one is obligated to come up. No one is forced to write queers while closeted. I'm not inventing these questions. They're in the original text. Fairness makes you uncomfortable. How can you, and importantly, why would you want to slide that on yourself and say work in queer space? well as away from creating queer. Guys about Becky Albertalli and people making money off queer stories, not specifically exploring through art. Oh, Matilda star Mara Wilson, one famous child. But it's really strange, isn't it? Child actors end up homosexual. I'm sure there's nothing organized there, though. That would be sinister and brave. So Mara Wilson said, I get them, but I also know that I wrote stories about queer. I also very naive. No, Dolan added, expecting for authors to be community ambassadors when straight authors get to be authors is homophobic, regardless of who's saying it. Someone can't immerse themselves in any queer community unless they're out to you specifically is a severe main character syndrome. Go outside. Okay, people forget that it's still illegal to be sick. What we aren't going to do is gatekeep the queer. Oh, and Bizag says, when a straight person predominantly writes queer stories, I cock an eyebrow because there's more going on. Binary and bi until I was almost 27 years old, but felt a close affinity with queer culture my whole life. May I, if I wasn't so being that problematic straight person, I would have figured out my shit out so much sooner. Whatever that is supposed to be. And my favorite response, and this is sweet. This is sweet. This is sweet. This is sweet. White gays need to be stopped. Yep, they need to be stopped. I guess they need their own Black Lives Matter movement. Right? Of course, this for years and years and years. Oh, feminism. I guess they need their own Black Lives Matter movement. Right? Of course, this for years and years and years. Oh, feminism dominated. Yeah, well, they've all been cowed. I mean, J.K. Rowling is a billionaire, so I guess you can afford to have your reputation trashed. And the Harry Potter fans deciding that they're never sending another dime her way. That said, I have been sending another dime her way. That said, I have been impressed by her unwillingness to act on this. Hickman says internal exile Benedict option may be the only way for whites in the USSA. Yeah, I'm not really fond of that, actually. I mean, it hasn't come to a fight yet. Only one side is fighting. We'll see what happens after November the 3rd. Because if Trump wins and we get an insurrection, yeah, then we're going to see how these are. Office Knight says sinners who don't want to be sinners should only be virtuous characters. Doesn't look like a boy, says Metal. Is the same standard as a black Hamlet? Yeah, well, you know my opinion on that. If you don't, I'll repeat it. I had no problem with black opera singers singing, roles where they're playing Europeans, or I don't know. It depends on the context. Black actors playing roles which are properly white roles. But then we rolled this whitewashing. You can't have white people play roles which go to black. Okay, fine. You want to have it that way? We'll just make it so that, if we're doing Don Giovanni, then none of the females in this are allowed to be black or allowed to be Asian or allowed to be anything else but white, because that would be, you're taking roles away from white people. Driss Du says, I remember being too cool for Harry Potter. Jim Smith says, check out a photo of Nixon's wife who looks like my best friend man when he was 14. I even fooled my sister with the photo. Yes, I had a double take when I first saw the picture. She really looks like a chubby teenage boy. Rituale Romanum says, what is wrong with these people? Does being wealthy make your kids gay? Being a celebrity seems to have a lot to do with that. There's talk in the gossip columns about something called the group. You may have heard that a lot of famous actors and actresses have transgender children. Sandra Bullock has an African transgender. And apparently Sandra Bullock discovered that this unfortunate child was transgender at the age of 5 or 6. It's not going to be a happy story. It's not going to be a happy story at all for that poor child. Yes, and Metal Mike says, and Pete Townsend was not watching child porn. He was doing research on child porn in order to fight against it. It's an excuse that's commonly used. I don't know why they would think that anyone would fall for that excuse. This is particularly someone like Pete Townsend, who now claims that he was sexually abused as a child. Very convenient. You want to remind yourself of that? You want to take yourself back to that? No, I'm sorry. It doesn't wash. I'm going to go back to talking briefly about Joe Biden, but in a somewhat different context, because Joe Biden has been involved in a religious controversy during this election. Apparently Joe Biden is a devout Catholic. When the media uses the phrase devout Catholic, what they mean is someone who does not burn a picture of the Pope in public, like that shaven-headed, crazy Irish woman did on Saturday Night Live. An American priest, his name is James Altman, is in very serious trouble. He's in La Crosse, Wisconsin, because he has spoken the truth about Catholic orthodoxy. Oh, yes, Joe Biden. Oh, rosary. You know, what are they going to claim? The stigmata for him soon enough? Marianne Kreitzer writes in LifeSite, the City of God has a big problem. Many of those charged with protecting and defending her have gone over to the enemy. Some are active members of the treasonous conspiracy. Others commit treason by their silence. They are the nice guys who want to be liked and admired. They don't want anyone rocking the boat by insisting on unpleasant truths. So they say and do nothing, while the active conspirators within and the enemies without take jackhammers and wrecking balls to the foundation of the holy city. Several years ago, Deacon James Toner discussed the nice guy syndrome in an article in The Wanderer, linking it to Hannah Arendt's description of the banality of evil. Nice guys can do great evil because of apathy, because of unwillingness to seek the truth and then do it. Truth obliges. Knowing the truth requires us to act in that truth, to do the truth. James 1:22. If being a nice guy means that we must be wishy-washy or apathetic about knowing and serving truth, then we must be as disagreeable, as dyspeptic as possible. This brings us to the current situation of Father James Altman of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and his Bishop William Patrick Callahan. In a recent homily, Father Altman pointed out that Catholics cannot be Democrats because of party positions advancing intrinsic evils. Support for abortion and homosexuality are litmus tests for Democrats written specifically into their platform. Catholics can't support that. But Bishop Callahan publicly called out Father Altman for his divisive tone, saying he inflicted a wound on the church. He no doubt could have described his spiritual son as disagreeable and dyspeptic. The bishop threatens canonical penalties if Father Altman fails to hear and respond to my fraternal correction. Correction for what exactly? Not the message, apparently, but a tone he doesn't like. Bishop Callahan is certainly entitled to his opinion, but that's all it is, an opinion, but one accompanied by threats of aggressive action. As he considers his next move, the bishop has already forbade Father Altman from live streaming masses. The bishop called Father Altman's homily a scandal, was it? The bishop's primary duties are to teach, govern, and sanctify. Priests share in that duty as the bishop's representatives. Father Altman teaches the truth with clarity. His words stir the Orthodox Catholics, starved by the gruel served up daily by Catholic nice guys preaching Pablo from the pulpit. Father Altman upholds the church's doctrinal teaching. He speaks with boldness, walking in the footsteps of saints and prophets who defended the faith throughout history. Contrast his voice with that of Father James Martin, S.J., who embraces and promotes homosexual depravity. Instead of being silenced and reprimanded, however, as a scandal wounding the church, Martin is the darling of liberal bishops and even the Vatican apparatchik, where he serves in the Office of Communications. That is indeed a treasonous scandal. Yes, and it appears that James Martin, Father Jim, sicked his fans on Father Altman. A Catholic bishop in Texas has demonstrated his support, his active support for Father Altman, as has the Holy Archbishop Vigano. He was interviewed by Edward Penton, and he made the argument without Vatican II, destruction wrought by the revolutions of the 60s would not have happened. Without Vatican II, we have not have had the student revolution that radically changed life in the world, the vision of the family, the role of women, the very concept of authority. Vigano said he believed the betrayal by self-styled Catholic politicians, such as U.S. presidential contender Joe Biden, rests entirely on the unfaithful clergy, secular and regular, enslaved to modernist theology. He said such politicians also owe themselves to a hierarchy which neither knew how to nor wanted to intervene with the necessary firmness to prevent this incalculable damage to the entire body of society. Vigano said there can be no doubt about the connection between the church throwing open her doors to the world and unhesitatingly discarding her glorious heritage and recent news stories, such as George Soros's anti-life Open Society donating over $1 million to the Society of Jesus. George Soros, eh? Yeah, one might think that they might want to return that money. The interviewer, Marco Tassati, who conducted the interview with Archbishop Vigano, the Democratic candidate Joe Biden claims to be Catholic, but he's in favor of abortion until the 9th month and same-sex marriage. In fact, Joe Biden, when he was vice president, married 2 men in the White House. One would think that that act alone should have been sufficient for him to be forbidden Holy Communion, but no. Let's see. The Archbishop says that he had told Pope Francis, I believe in the history of the United States, there has never been an administration with so many Catholics at the top. Biden, Secretary of State John Kerry, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, all three of them ostentatiously profess to be Catholic pro-abortion and in favor of homosexual marriage and gender ideology in defiance of church teaching. How do you explain this contradiction? And I added a Jesuit, Father Robert Drinan, from Boston College, held the post of Democratic U.S. Representative for the state of Massachusetts in Washington for 10 years, from 1971 to 1981. Drinan was one of the most strenuous advocates and promoters of abortion. Pope Francis did not react in the slightest, just as he did not react on June 23rd, 2013, when answering one of his specific questions, I revealed to him who Cardinal McCarrick really was. A monster with a taste for young boys, who became arguably the most powerful member of the hierarchy in America, despite the fact that everyone knew about this. Archbishop Vigano is a fan of Donald Trump. He's so much of a fan that this was last week, he began a 54-day Rosary Novena to pray for the Lord's holy will be accomplished in the U.S. presidential election. The 54-day Rosary Novena is made up of 6 successive traditional Rosary Novenas consisting of 9 days each. Now, his opening remarks, St. Pius V ordered the faithful to recite the Rosary to impetrate victory from God in the epic battle of the Christian Armada against the Turks in the waters of Lepanto. Still today, at noon each day, the bells ring in our cities to recall October 7, 1571. The Senate of the Republic of Venice wanted to honor the Queen of Victories by having these words engraved on the Doge's palace. Not valor, not arms, but leaders, but Our Lady of the Holy Rosary made us victors. Now, politicians are not supposed to get involved in politics, men of the cloth because of a tax-exempt status. But you see, Vigano is not. He hasn't mentioned Trump in this. It reminds me of the first elections in Italy after World War II. There was very much a fear of a communist takeover of the country. And the church did all it could to prevent this. And a sermon, or a homily rather, was given in each Catholic church in Italy, where the priest would say, I'm not going to tell you which party that you should vote for, but you should vote for a party which is both Christian and democratic, i.e. the Christian Democrats. And Joe Biden, and I'm looking at a picture of his mummified face here. This is when he was speaking he wasn't in Pittsburgh. He was somewhere in the Pittsburgh vicinity. Apparently it's a closely held secret where Joe Biden is at any time. Now, he's absolutely shameless. He is absolutely shameless. And, just to demonstrate this, capping off his remarks, which were largely seen by critics as an attempt to blame Trump for the ongoing violent riots by leftists in Democrat-run cities, Biden evoked Pope John Paul II, asserting, quote, Donald Trump is determined to instill fear in America. That's what his entire campaign for the president has come down to, fear. But I believe we'll be guided by the words of Pope John Paul II, words drawn from the scriptures, be not afraid, unquote. Okay. Let's see if we can juggle this, so we can keep these balls in the air. Donald Trump was very bad because he did not panic or encourage anyone to panic because of coronavirus. Okay. But wait, Donald Trump is determined to instill fear in America. Well, he was very much determined not to instill fear regarding COVID-19. Yes, be not afraid. But Biden's whole argument, and the Democrats and the media's whole argument, was that Trump was not afraid. Again, Franklin Roosevelt said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, and he is lauded for that. Where to repeat my joke from last week, what Roosevelt obviously should have said is, we're all going to die, Ray! But these people can never get their story straight. And, oh yes, transsexual Satanist anarchist whose slogan is F the police wins GOP nomination for New Hampshire County Sheriff. That is from the U.S. Sun. And just, remember that every time you hear about, what a repressive, restrictive American society is. I suppose a lot of you were forced to read this Arthur Miller play, The Crucible, in school. It's all about the Salem witch trials. And of course, witches, there's no such thing as witches. Can you believe how evil these Puritans were? With this persecution of women, wise women, feminists before their time. Starting in around the 1960s or 1970s, we started seeing people appear in public proclaiming proudly that they were witches. Now, very few of them claim to be the bad witches. They're always the good witches, the white witches. But of course, witchcraft is it's seeking a political power through demonic means. But apparently it's okay. The U.S. Army, they hold satanic services when required. The chaplain's there. Does the RCC excommunicate anyone for any reason anymore, says Yo Mama? Some, what you might call conservatives, are threatened with this. And some have. Not very many. Donald Robertson says there's a huge hurricane in the Gulf. It's getting kind of late in the season for a Gulf storm. Was Justice Kennedy ever excommunicated? No. There have been situations in the past where Catholic politicians have made a point of avoiding churches where they would worry they would suffer the embarrassment of being publicly denied communion. I believe this is what Paul Martin did when he was Prime Minister of Canada. DeBreas, excellent show, KMG. Why, thank you for that. Ritual Romanum says the church needs to grow up here and get rid of these heretics. They don't consider them to be heretics. I am reading Willa Cather's novel, Death Comes for the Archbishop. which is about French missionaries in New Mexico before the Civil War. And it's eye-opening. It's describing a completely different world, where these priests, they're holy men, believe it. They believe it all. They live for it. Whereas if you hear from, priests and almost all bishops, they're just going through the motions. They simply don't believe it. Let's see. Goose says the Roman Catholic Church is a captured institution. The gates of hell prevailed against the false church. I don't know. If one good bishop survives, then the Catholic Church cannot be said to have died. But no, I don't think it doesn't look good. The small flock. Karl Rocker was a Jesuit, influential theologian in the 20th century. He wanted the church to be drastically smaller. They didn't like this idea of churches bursting, churches constantly being built. Too many people, too many low-class people, So, hello all. So that's the show for today. And as the troubles that I've had, the very embarrassing troubles that I've had with the show have persuaded me that I'm going to have to get an internet connection, the speed of which is, I don't know, it's much higher and it costs twice as much. So let's see if I can get that done tomorrow. So what is coming up on the show this week? I already mentioned on Friday, we're going to be discussing Willa Cather's novel, Death Comes with Our Bishop. And on Theater Day, I'm going to be discussing 6 cartoon American animation genes, Tex Avery. And we're going to be in one of them, no question about it. Tex Avery did several cartoons. The Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf are put into modern situations. And so there'll be at least one of that series in there. Also, certainly one of The World of Oh, which there's all these machines. This is from the 1950s. And there are all these machines which can vastly improve our life, because that was the, you heard a lot about the world of tomorrow and how we weren't going to have to do anything anymore because these machines were going to do it for us. And of course, in the commercials, everything goes wrong. Everything goes wrong, and the machines revolt against their would-be huge masters. I'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m., 7 p.m. Eastern. If you like the show or any part of it, I'd appreciate it if you click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. So if you would like to support the show with a donation, much appreciated at all times, but especially this time. My PayPal is Kevin_Grace@hot.com. Again, Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. If you are Canadian, you can send money to me directly through Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And I leave you with this. In these days of social, atomizational, and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear listeners and viewers, manage to form a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.